Hey, what's up everyone? I hope you all are doing well. This is Jack from byprogrammers.com and welcome back to a brand new episode of Let's Code React Native. In this episode, we are going to continue to build the second part of our food delivery app. In the previous episode, we have actually accomplished the custom drawer navigator, the home screen, as well as the filter model. As promised, in the second part of this project, we are going to work on all the authentication screens, which includes the onboarding screen, sign in screen, sign up screen, the OTP authentication screen, as well as the password recovery screen over here. Alright, now with that being said, let's get started. Okay, so just like the previous episode, instead of creating the project from scratch, we have actually prepared a SAR template so that it will be a lot easier for you guys to follow along. So go ahead and download the SAR template. The link is in the description below, and once you have done that, you should be able to get this. As usual, the first thing we need to do here is to open up your terminal and run npm install, like that. Alright, after that we can then run npx react native link. Next, we need to cd into iOS and run pod install. And lastly, we can cd back to the root folder and run npx react native run iOS. Alright, so as you can see here, the SAR template basically includes the splash screen, the assets folder over here, the constants folder, as well as a couple of empty screens that we will be working on shortly. Okay. On a side note, if you would like to know how to include splash screen in both iOS and Android, be sure to check out Let's Code React Native episode 10, as we are not going to cover in this project. Alright, so the first screen that we'll be working on is the onboarding screen over here. Alright, so for the onboarding screen, we have the app icon at the top, followed by a scrollable list like this. And within the list itself, we have the background component over here. We have the image, and followed by the text components over here. Then after that, we have the pagination section, and this is going to animate in accordance to the scrollable over here. Okay, and lastly, we have the button component. Okay, now go back to your source code. I'm gonna hide the terminal and open up the onboarding.js file. Alright, so first thing first, we are going to import a couple more components from React Native. So we need view, we need text, we need image background, we need image, and also we need animated. Alright, after that we need to import from constants. We need constants, we need images, fonts, sizes, and colors. Alright, next for the container view, I am going to remove these two properties and replace it with background color, and it should be white, like that. And the first thing we would like to render over here is the app icon. Okay, so go back to your source code. We are going to render a new function called render header logo, and we are going to create this function over here. Function render header logo, and we are going to return a container view. Give it a bit of styling. Position should be equals to absolute. Top, if the sizes.height is more than 800, then it should be 50. If it's not, then it will be 25. Left equals to 0, right equals to 0, align items equals to center, and justify content equals to center as well, like that. Alright, now within this container view, we are going to render an image component where the source will be images.logo_02. The resize mode should be equals to contain, and the style will be width equals to sizes.width multiplied by 0.5, and the height will be 100. Alright, save it. Alright, cool, so the app icon is in place. Next, we'll be working on the scrollable leaves over here. Alright, so go back to your source code. Over here, right underneath the header logo function, we are going to render animated.flatlist, like that. The reason why we need to make use of the animated component is so that we can animate the pagination section later on. Okay. Alright, so for this flat list, it has to be horizontal and it should be paging enabled like that. The data will be constants.onboarding screens. Scroll event throttle should be equals to 16. Snap to alignment should be equals to center. And the shows horizontal scroll indicator should be equals to false. Alright, after that we need to include the key extractor as well. Over here we have item followed by arrow function, and it will be item.id. And lastly, we need the render item prop. So render item followed by item index, arrow function, and over here we are going to return a container view like that. Give it a bit of styling. Width equals to sizes.width. Oops. .width like that. And within this container view, we basically have two different sections, which are the header section and also the detail section over here. For the header section, we have image background as well as the image itself, whereas for the detail section, we have two text components. Alright, so let's see how we can do that. Alright, so over here within the container view, we have two sections, which are the header section followed by the detail section, like that. Alright, so for the header section, we need a container view as well. Alright, give it a bit of styling. The flags should be equals to treat. Okay, now within the container view, for the header section, we are going to render an image background component. And for the image background, the source will be item.backgroundImage. Give it a bit of styling as well. Flags equals to 1, align items equals to center, justify content equals to flags n, height equals to 100%, and width equals to 100% as well. Alright, save it. Alright, cool, so we have the image background in place. Don't worry about the height at the moment, because it will be fixed later on after we included the detail section over here. Okay, so within the image background component, we are going to render an image component like this, where the source will be item.bannerImage, resize mode equals to contain, and of course we need to give it a bit of styling as well. So for the width, it's going to be sizes.width multiplied by 0.8, and for the height, same thing. It's going to be sizes.width multiplied by 0.8 as well. And for the margin bottom, it should be negative sizes.padding. Alright, save it. Okay, so the header section is sort of in place, just that we need to work on the alignment later on. Let's proceed to the detail section first and see if it fixes the issue. Alright, so for the detail section, we need a container view as well. Give it a bit of styling, where the flags equals to 1, margin top equals to 30, align items equals to center, justify content equals to center as well, and padding horizontal equals to sizes.radius. Okay, save it. Alright, next we need to include the text component for the detail section. So over here we need to render text component, and for this it's going to be item.title. Give it a bit of styling as well. Fonts equals to h1, and I would like to override the font size to 25. Alright, next we are going to render another text component, and this one is going to be item.description. Okay, same thing, we need to give it a bit of styling as well. Margin top equals to sizes.radius, text align equals to center, color equals to colors.darkgray, padding horizontal equals to sizes.padding, and lastly the fonts will be body tree, like that. Okay, save it. Alright, we are almost there, as you can see. And I'm pretty sure the alignment issue will be fixed after we added the footer section over here. Alright, so go back to the source code. Right underneath the animated.flatlist component, we are going to render a new function called render footer, like that. And we are going to create this function over here. So function render footer, and we are going to return a container view, give it a bit of styling. The height should be equals to 160, like that. Save it. Perfect, we have finally fixed the alignment issues. Just that we might need to change the height of this image background so that it can actually form a smooth curve over here. Alright, let's see how we can do that. So over here in the flat list, for the image background component, and over here, if the index equals to 1, then the height will be 86%. If it's not, then it will be 100%. Alright, let's see. Oops, I'm gonna try 92% instead. Perfect. Okay. Alright, next for the footer section, we basically have two different parts, which are the pagination section and followed by the buttons. Alright, so go back to the render footer function over here. We have two different sections over here, which are the pagination or the dots and the buttons section. Alright, so for the pagination section, we are going to render a container view, give it a bit of styling, flex equals to 1, and justify content equals to center. And within the container view, we are going to render a custom component called dots, like that. And we are going to create this component over here. Alright, so constant dots followed by the arrow function, and we are going to return a container view, give it a bit of styling, flex direction equals to row, align items equals to center, justify content equals to center as well. Alright, now over here we are going to make use of the map method to render the dots. Alright, so constant dot onboarding screens dot map over here is going to be item index followed by arrow function, and we are going to return an animated view, like that, where the key is going to be dot dash index, and the style will be border radius equals to 5, margin horizontal equals to 6, width equals to 10, height equals to 10, and the background color equals to colors.primary. Alright, save it. Alright, cool, so we have successfully rendered the UI for the pagination section. All we need to do now is to animate it in accordance to the flat list over here. Alright, so in order to do that, we need to first declare the scrollAx animated variable. Alright, so constant scrollAx equals to new animated dot value, and the initial value is going to be 0. And next we need to navigate to the flat list over here. We need to include the onScroll prop like this. So onScroll equals to animated dot event. Over here it's going to be native event content offset x scrollAx, and we need to make sure the use native driver equals to false. Alright, so what's happening over here is that we are basically getting the x position, the x scroll position, and assign the value to the scrollAx variable that we have declared earlier, right? So now we can then head back to the dots function over here, functional component, sorry. We need to first retrieve the dots position, so constant dot position equals to animated dot divide scrollAx, and I'm going to divide it with sizes dot width. This is so that we can retrieve the dot position, and by making use of the dot position, we can then animate the dot color as well as the dot width. Alright, so for the dot color, constant dot color equals to dot position dot interpolate, and over here the input range is going to be index -1, index plus 1, and the output range is going to be colors.light orange followed by colors.primary and colors.light orange. The extrapolate will be claim, like that. Alright, I'm gonna copy this part for the dot width as well. We need the constant keyword over here, and for the output range it's going to be 10 followed by 30, and lastly we have 10. Alright, and lastly we can then replace the width with dot width, and the color I'm gonna replace it with dot color. Alright, save it. Now if we were to scroll the list, the dots or the pagination should animate accordingly. Sweet. Alright, so after the pagination section, next we are going to work on the buttons section over here. Okay, so over here for the button section, we are going to render a container view as well. Give it a bit of styling. Flex direction equals to row. Justify content equals to space between. Padding horizontal equals to sizes.padding, and margin vertical equals to sizes.padding as well. Alright, now within this container view, we are going to render two custom components called text button. Alright, so for the text button component, we need the label prop. So label equals to skip, and after this we have the next button, right? So we have skip over here and the next button over here. Alright, now in the root directory, we need to create a new folder called components. And within the components folder, we will create a new file called textbutton.js. Alright, so over here, same thing. We need to import from React. We need to import a couple of components from React Native. Alright, so for this, we need the touchable opacity and also the text component. Alright, and over here, we need to import from constants. We need fonts and colors. Alright, next we can then create the text button functional component. So constant text button, we will be taking in the label prop for now. Alright, followed by the arrow function, and over here we are going to return something. Don't forget we need to export default text button over here. Alright, so for the text button component, we are going to return a touchable opacity, give it a bit of styling, align items equals to center, justify content equals to center as well, and the background color equals to colors.primary. And within the touchable opacity, we are going to render the text component, and over here is going to be label, give it a bit of styling as well. Color is going to be white, and the font is going to be H3, like that. Alright, now save it. Next, within the components folder, we need to create a new file called index.js. Alright, so over here, we need to import the text button like this. Alright, so over here is going to be text button, and we need to export it over here like this. Alright, save it. And now we can then head back to the onboarding screen, scroll to the top, and over here we can then import from the components, and we need to import text button like this. Alright, save it. Alright, cool, so the text buttons are in place, just that we need to add a few more props so that it can look and behave like our mock over here. Alright, now head back to the text button component. Over here, we need the button container style as well, button container style. We need the label style, and also we need onPress. Alright, so for the button container style, we can include it like this. Same thing goes for the label style over here. And lastly, for the onPress, we are going to supply it to the onPress prop over here, like that. Alright, save it. Now head back to the onboarding screen, navigate to the text button component. Alright, now over here, we are going to fulfill the props. Okay, so for the button container style, for this, the background color should be equals to null, since we don't need the background color over here. Alright, so for the label style, it's going to be colors.dark gray 2. And whenever I click on the skip button, I would like to navigate. Oops, I think I need to include the navigation over here, like that. Alright, so I would like to navigate to the sign in screen. Now for the next button, the button container style is going to be height 60, width 200, and border radius equals to sizes.radius. And we will work on the unpress shortly. Alright, so now save it. Perfect, so we have the text buttons component in place. And all we need to do now is to add the functionality for the next button. And by clicking on the next button, we should be able to scroll through the list like this. Okay, so in order to achieve this, we need to make use of ref. Okay, so over here, underneath the scroll x variable, we need to declare the flat list ref equals to react.useRef, like that. Okay, and we are going to assign this ref to our flat list over here. So ref equals to flat list ref, like that. And lastly, we can then work on the next unpress prop over here. Alright, so whenever we click on the next button, we need to first calculate the current index. So let index equals to math.ceiling, just a bit of mathematics over here, number scroll x dot value dot underscore value actually divided by sizes dot width. Alright, now if the index is less than constant dot onboarding screens dot length minus 1, then we are going to scroll to the next item. If it's not, then we are going to navigate to the sign in screen like this. Alright, so in order to scroll to a particular item over here, we need to make use of the flat list ref. So flat list ref dot current dot scroll to index, index equals to index plus 1, and we need to set the animated to true. Alright, save it. Now if we were to click on the next button, we should be able to scroll through the list. Oops, a bit of typo over here, like that. Alright, I'm gonna reload the app. Let's try again. Perfect. Now for the last item, if I were to click on the next button, we should be able to navigate to the sign in screen. Sweet. Alright, so that's all for the onboarding screen. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't notice that the last screen has a different layout over here. Don't worry, it should be a quick fix for this. Alright, so go back to your source code. I'm gonna reload the app. In the onboarding.js file, scroll to the top, and over here, we need two more things. We need the current index state. So current index set current index equals to react.useState, and the initial value is going to be 0. This is basically for us to keep track which onboarding screen is currently visible. Alright, so after the current index state, we need a reference variable called onViewChangeRef equals to react.useRef, and this reference variable is going to be an arrow function. The parameter is going to be an object of viewable items and changed. Alright, so followed by the arrow function like that, and over here we are going to set the current index to viewable items. We are getting the first item of this array dot index, like that. Now that I'm here, I'm going to change this to reference variable as well. This is so that it doesn't trigger an unnecessary re-render. Okay, so over here, react.useRef, same thing. The initial value is going to be the animated value dot current, like that. Okay, next we are going to navigate to the flat list. Over here, underneath the onScroll prop, we are going to make use of another prop called onViewable items changed, and we are going to supply the reference variable over here. So onViewChangeRef.current. This prop over here basically allows us to understand which screen is currently visible. Alright, next we can then navigate back to the render footer function over here. In the button section, we will only render these two text buttons if the current index is less than constant dot onboarding screens dot length minus 1, like that. Alright, now save it. Okay, so if we were to scroll to the last screen, the buttons should disappear. Great. Okay, now underneath this section over here, we are going to render this button, let's get started, if the current index is equals to constants.onboardingscreens.length minus 1, like that. Okay, if the current index is equals to constants.onboardingscreens.length minus 1, we are going to render a container view. Give it a bit of styling. The padding horizontal should be equals to sizes.padding, and the margin vertical should be equals to sizes.padding as well. Alright, now within this container view, we are going to render a text button where the label equals to let's get started. The button container style equals to height will be 60 and border radius is going to be sizes.radius. And lastly, whenever I click on this text button, I'm going to navigate to the sign in screen, like that. Alright, now for the next button over here, I'm going to remove all this since we don't need them anymore. This one as well. And I'm going to replace this with current index. Alright, save it. Okay, now let me try to scroll back to the first screen. Okay, the buttons are showing properly. And if I were to click on the next button, I should still be able to scroll through the list like this. Alright, and if I were to click on the let's get started button, we should be able to navigate to the sign in screen. Perfect. Alright, so that's all for the onboarding screens. Next, we'll move on to the sign in screen. And if you take a look at the mark, the sign in, sign up, OTP as well as the password recovery screens, they actually share a very similar layout, where we have the app icon at the top, followed by the title and the subtitle, and lastly we have the content of that particular screen. For that reason, we are going to create a layout that can be shared across all the screens over here. Alright, so go back to your source code. In the authentication folder, we are going to create a new file called offlayout.js, like that. Alright, so over here, same thing. We are going to import from React. We are going to import from React Native. For this, we need view, we need text, and also we need image. After this, we also need to import from the constants, like this. We need images, we need fonts, we need sizes, and also we need colors. After this, we can then set up the offLayout functional component. So constant offLayout equals to, for this component, we need 4 props, which are title, subtitle, title container style, and lastly, it's going to be children. Alright, followed by the arrow function, and over here, we are going to return something. Don't forget, we need to export default off layout, like that. Alright, so for the off layout component, we are going to render a container view, give it a bit of styling. Flex should be equals to 1, and the padding vertical should be equals to sizes.padding, and the background color should be equals to white. Now within the container view, I'm going to just render the title just to see if it works. Alright, now save it. Okay, next we need to include the offLayout component in the index.js file over here. Right, so import the authentication / offLayout, like that. Here it's going to be offLayout, and we need to export it over here. Alright, save it. Now we need to head over to the sign in screen, and over here we need to import the offLayout, like this. Alright, now I'm gonna simply remove all of this and render the off layout instead. The title is going to be let's sign you in. Alright, save it and see if it works. Alright, perfect. Okay, now we can then head back to the off layout, and for the off layout, we basically need to render 3 different sections, which are the app icon, followed by the title as well as the subtitle, and lastly we have the content or the children. Okay, so over here we have the app icon, followed by the title and subtitle, and lastly we have the children, the content or the children, like that. Okay, now before we can work on these sections, we need to install a library called React Native Keyboard Away Scroll View. Okay, so scroll down over here, copy this. You can use yarn if you want to. Go back to your terminal, paste it and hit enter. Okay, as usual, I'm gonna close the app like that, and now I'm going to run npx react native link, and I'm going to cd into iOS and run pod install. Once that's done, we can go back to the root folder and run npx react native run iOS. Okay, now I'm gonna hide the terminal and I'm going to navigate to the sign in screen. Alright, and over here we can import the React Native Keyboard Aware Scroll View, and over here it's going to be Keyboard Aware Scroll View, like that. And next we are going to wrap the entire section over here within the Keyboard Aware Scroll View, like that. Alright, now for the Keyboard Aware Scroll View, we need to supply some props, which are the keyboard dismiss mode is going to be on drag, and the content container style, the flex should be equals to 1, and the padding horizontal should be equals to sizes.padding. Alright, so for the first section over here, which is the app icon, we need to render a container view like that. Give it a bit of styling. The align item should be equals to center, and within this container view, we need to render an image component where the source is going to be images dot logo underscore 02. Alright, and the resize mode should be equals to contain, and the style is going to be height 100, and the width should be equals to 200. Alright, save it. Perfect. Next, for the title section, we need to render a container view as well. Give it a bit of styling. Margin top should be equals to sizes.padding, and we are going to include the title container style as well. And within this container view, we are going to render two text components like that. The first one is for title. Give it a bit of styling. Text align should be equals to center, and the fonts should be H2. And the second text component is going to be subtitle. Same thing, we need to give it some styling as well. So style will be text align center. Color is going to be colors.dark gray. Margin top is going to be sizes.base, and we are going to set the font to body tree. Alright, now save it. Oh, the reason why subtitle is not showing over here is because we didn't set it in the sign-in screen. So head over to your signin.js file. Over here we will include the subtitle prop, and this one is going to be welcome back, you have been missed, like that. Save it. Perfect. And lastly, in the off layout, all we need to do for the third section is to simply render the children, like that. Save it. Okay, so that's all for the off layout. Next, we can then start to work on the content of the sign-in screen. And as you can see here, we need to render the form input or the text input, be it email or password, in multiple different screens. For that reason, we are going to create a standalone component called form input. Alright, so go back to your source code. In the components folder, we are going to create a new file called form input.js. Alright, and over here we need to import from React. We need to import from React Native. For this, we need view, we need text, and also we need text input. Alright, after that we need to import from constants, and for this we need fonts, we need sizes, and also we need colors. And over here we can then create the form input functional component, so constant form input. And for this component, we are going to receive quite a number of props, which includes the container style, label, the placeholder, input style, the prepend component, append component. Don't worry if you don't understand the use of these props at the moment, you will see why we need them shortly, alright? So after the append component, we need onChange, we need secure text entry, this is for the password, alright? And the keyboard type, by default it should be default. Autocomplete type, by default it should be off. Auto capitalization, auto capitalize, and the default value should be none. And the error message, the default value should be an empty string, like that. Alright, so followed by the arrow function, and over here we are going to return something. And don't forget we need to export default the form input, like that. Alright, so for the form input component, we basically need to render a container view, and the style is going to be the container style, like that. And within the container view, we basically need to render two sections. The first section is basically the title and the error message section, and the second section is going to be the text input itself. Okay, so go back to your source code. Over here, the first section is basically the label and error message section, like that, and the second section is the text input itself. Okay, so for this we need another view, give it a bit of styling. Flags direction should be equals to row, and the justify content should be equals to space between. Alright, now within this view we need to render two text components. The first one is going to be the label, give it a bit of styling. Color should be equals to gray, and the fonts should be equals to body 4. Alright, and the second text component is going to be the error message. Give it a bit of styling as well. The color should be equals to red, and the fonts should be equals to body 4 as well. Next, for the text input section, we need to render a container view as well. Give it a bit of styling. Flags direction should be equals to row. The height should be equals to 55. Padding horizontal, padding horizontal should be equals to sizes.padding. Margin top should be equals to sizes.base. Border radius should be equals to sizes.radius, and the background color should be equals to colors.light gray 2. Alright, now within this view, we are going to render the prepend component, followed by the text input, and lastly we have the append component, like that. And for the text input component, we need to supply some of the props. First, we need to give it some styling. Flags should be equals to 1. And we are going to include the input style as well, like that. After that, we need to set the placeholder, should be equals to placeholder. The placeholder text color should be equals to colors.gray, like that. Secure text entry should be equals to secure text entry. Keyboard type, same thing, should be equals to keyboard type. Autocomplete type should be equals to autocomplete type, like that. Auto capitalize should be equals to auto capitalize. And lastly, for the onChange text should be equals to an arrow function with a parameter of text, and we are going to trigger the onChange function by passing the text over, like that. Alright, now save it. Next, we need to include the form input in the index.js file over here. Alright, I'm gonna just copy and paste it like that and change it to form input. And don't forget, we need to export it over here. Save it. Next, we can then head over to the sign-in screen. Over here, we need to import a couple more components from React Native. We need touchable opacity, and also we need image. Alright, and after this, we need to import from constants. We need fonts, we need sizes, we need colors, and also we need icons. Alright, and after this, we can then import the form input from the components. Alright, so over here is going to be components, and this one is going to be form input, like that. Alright, now within the off layout, over here, we need to render a container view. Give it a bit of styling. flex should be equals to 1, and margin top should be equals to sizes.padding times 2. Alright, now within this container view, we basically have 4 different sections, which are the form input section, followed by the save me and forgot password section. After that, we have the sign in section, and lastly, we have the sign up section. Alright, so over here, we have the form input section, followed by the save me and forgot password section. After that, we have the sign in section, and lastly, we have the sign up section. Alright, so for the form input section, we are going to render the form input custom component like that. The label is going to be email. The keyboard type should be equals to email address. Autocomplete type should be equals to email. Next, for the onChange prop, it's going to be an arrow function with the parameter value like that. And later on, we need to make sure to validate the email, and we need to set the email like this. Now, before we proceed further, let us first create the states over here. Alright, we need the email state. So email set email equals to react.useState, and the initial value is going to be an empty string. Next, we need a state for the password as well. So password set password equals to same thing, react.useState, and the initial value is going to be an empty string as well. We need a state for the email error message as well. So email error set email error, and the initial value, same thing, is an empty string. Alright, now go back to the form input component. After the onChange prop, we need to supply the error message prop as well. So error message equals to email error. And lastly, we need to supply the append component prop. This is for the thick or the cross icon later on. Okay, so for the append component, we need to render a container view like that. Give it a bit of styling. Justify content should be equals to center. And within this container view, we are going to render an image component. For the source, it's going to be icons.correct. We need to change it later on, don't worry about it for now. Alright, I'm gonna hardcode it to the correct icon first, and the style will be height 20, width 20, and the tint color is going to be colors.green. Alright, now save it. Perfect. Alright, after the email form input, next we have the password form input. Alright, now for the password, we need to create another state called show pass, like that. Set show pass. This is basically for us to control the visibility of the password. Alright, so equals to react.useState, and the initial value is going to be false. Alright, now over here, after the email form input, we are going to render another form input like that, where the label is going to be password. Secure text entry is going to be the opposite of show pass. Autocomplete type should be equals to password. For the container style, the margin top should be equals to sizes.radius. Alright, for the onChange, same thing, is going to be an arrow function like that, and we are going to set password by passing the value over. Alright, now save it. Okay, so we have the password form input in place. All we need to do now is to include the append component so that we can toggle the visibility of the password. Okay, so after the onChange, we need to include the append component prop, and for this we are going to render a touchable opacity like that. Give it a bit of styling. Width equals to 40. Align items equals to flex n. Justify content equals to center. And whenever I click on this button, I would like to set the show pass to the opposite of show pass, like that. Alright, now within this touchable opacity, we are going to render an image component. For the source, if the show pass equals to true, then we are going to render icons.iClose. If it's not, then we are going to render icons.I, like that. Alright, give it a bit of styling as well. Height equals to 20, width equals to 20, and the tint color equals to colors.gray. Alright, now save it. Oops, this width should be equals to 20, like that. Perfect. Now we can enter the email like this. Alright, we need to work on the validation shortly, and also we can enter the password like this. And if I were to click on this button, we should be able to toggle the visibility like that. Perfect. Alright, next we are going to work on the form input validation, and in order to do that, we can make use of the functions that I have included in the utils.js file over here. So in the utils.js file, we basically have a couple of functions that allows us to validate the email as well as the password. Alright, so go back to your signin.js file, scroll to the top, and over here we are going to import from utils like that, and we are going to import the utils. Alright, now we can navigate to the form input component. Over here, right before we set the email, we can then call the validate email function from the utils file. Alright, so utils.validate email, and for this function we are going to pass the value over as well as to set the email error like that. Next, for the image component over here, we will only render the correct icon if email equals to empty or email not equals to empty and email error equals to empty. Alright, so if this is the case, we are going to render the correct icon. If it's not, then we are going to render the cancel icon. And for the thin color over here, if the email equals to empty, then we are going to render gray color like that. Else, if the email is not equals to empty and the email error equals to empty, then the color is going to be green. If it's not, then it will be red like that. Alright, now save it. Okay, now if I were to type something in the email form input, if it's not a valid email, the error message should be prompted over here. Right, let's see. Perfect. And if it's a valid email like this, the error message will disappear and the tick icon will be rendered over here. Great. Alright, so we have completed the form input section. Next, we'll move on to the save me and forgot password section over here. Alright. So scroll down. After the form input section over here, we are going to render a container view. Give it a bit of styling. The flex direction should be equals to row. Margin top should be equals to sizes.radius, and justify content should be equals to space between. Alright, now within this container view, we are going to render two things. We are going to render a switch like this and followed by the text button. Alright, so for the switch, we are going to create a custom component called custom switch. Alright, so go back to your source code over here. We are going to render a custom component called custom switch. And this component is going to take in two props, which are the value, and it's going to be save me. This is a state that we are going to create shortly. And the second prop that we need over here is the onChange prop. Whenever we click on the switch, we would like to get the value and then set the save me state like that. Alright, now before we proceed to create the custom component, we need to first create the state over here. Alright, so constant save me set save me equals to react.useState, and the initial value is going to be false. Alright, next in the components folder, we need to create a new file called custom switch like that. Same thing, we need to import from React, we need to import from React Native, and for this component we need view, we need text, we need touchable without feedback, and also we need the style sheet like that. Alright, after this we need to import from constants, and for this we need colors, fonts, and sizes. Alright, and after this, we can then create the custom switch functional component. So constant custom switch. And for this component, we will have two props, which are value and onChange, followed by the arrow function, and we are going to return something. Don't forget, we need to export default custom switch. And in order to make sure the codes over here are cleaner, we are going to make use of the style sheet. So constant styles equals to style sheet dot create, like that. And whenever the switch is on, so switch on container, we are going to have the following styles, which are width 40, height 20, padding right equals to 2, justify content equals to center, align items equals to flex n, border radius equals to 10, and lastly the background color equals to colors.primary. Next, if the switch is off, so switch off container, same thing, the width is going to be 40, height equals to 20, padding left is going to be 2, justify content equals to center, border width equals to 1, border color equals to colors.gray, and lastly the border radius equals to 10. And lastly, we need to render the dot, which is located in the middle, this dot over here. Okay, so for the dot, the width will be 12, the height will be 12 as well, and the border radius is going to be 6. Alright, now for the custom switch component, we are going to return the touchable without feedback component, like that, and the onPress is going to be onChange, and I'm going to pass the opposite of the value over, like that. And within the touchable without feedback component, we are going to render a container view, give it a bit of styling, flex direction equals to row. Alright, now within the view component, we will have two sections, which are the switch section, this part over here, and followed by the text section. Alright, so we have switch and followed by the text section. So for the switch section, we need a container view as well, like that. And for the style, if value equals to true, then we are going to render switch on container. If it's equals to false, then we are going to render switch off container, like that. Alright, and now within this view, we are going to render the dot. Alright, give it a bit of styling. We are going to include the style for the dot like this, so styles dot dot, and we are going to overwrite the background color. If the value equals to true, the background color should be equals to white. If it's equals to false, then it's going to be gray. Alright, since I don't have any children, I can do it like this. Alright, next for the text section over here, we are going to render a text component, give it a bit of styling. For the color, if the value equals to true, then it's going to be primary. If it's equals to false, then the color will be gray. Margin left is going to be sizes.base, and the fonts will be body 4. Alright, and over here, we are going to render save me. Save it. Alright, so that's all for the custom switch component. Don't forget, we need to include it in the index.js file. I'm gonna simply copy and paste it like this and change it to custom switch, and of course we need to export it over here, save it. Now go back to your sign-in file over here. After the form input, we are going to import the custom switch. Alright, save it. Perfect. Alright, cool, so we have the custom switch in place. Next, we are going to work on the forgot password text button. Alright, so to do that, first thing first, we need to import the text button component. Alright, then after the custom switch component over here, we are going to render the text button component. Alright, where the label is going to be forgot password. The button container style, the background color should be equals to null. We do not want any background color. And the label style, the color is going to be gray. and the font will be body 4. And lastly, whenever we click on the forgot password button on press like that, we are going to navigate. Oops, I need to include the navigate over here. Sorry, the navigation over here like that. Go back to the forgot password button. Whenever we click on this button, we would like to navigate to the forgot password screen. Alright, save it. Perfect. Now whenever we click on this button, we should be able to navigate to the forgot password screen. Cool. Alright, next we are going to work on the sign in button. Okay, so go back to your source code. Over here, we are going to render the text button component. Alright, and for this, the label is going to be sign in. The button container style, the height is going to be 55. Align items equals to center. Margin top equals to sizes.padding. Border radius equals to sizes.radius. And the background color equals to colors.primary. Alright, save it. Okay, cool, so we have successfully rendered the sign in text button over here. But this button should only be clickable if the user has already filled in the email and also the password. So to do that, over here, we will be creating a new function called isEnableSignIn. Alright, and this function will return true if the email is not equals to empty and the password is not equals to empty, and also the email error is empty. Like that. Alright, now go back to the sign in button. Over here, for the disable prop, we will only set to false if the isEnableSignIn function returns true, right? Like that. If it's not, then it will be true, which means if the isEnableSignIn function returns false, we are going to disable this text button. And I think we haven't implemented the disable prop in the text button component. So head over to your text button component. Over here, we are going to include disable like that. And over here for the disable prop like that, it's going to be equals to disable. Alright, save it. Now go back to your sign-in screen. For the background color, it is going to be primary if and only if the isEnableSignIn function returns true. Like that. If it returns false, then the color should be equals to transparent primary. Like that. Save it. Oops, there is something wrong with the isEnableSignIn function, so let's check that out. Over here, oh, a bit of typo. Alright, save it. Alright, so as expected, the sign in button will not be clickable at first, and it will only be clickable after you fill in the email as well as the password. Perfect. Alright, after the sign in button, next we are going to work on the sign up section. Okay, so go back to your source code. Over here, the sign up section, we are going to render a container view, give it a bit of styling. Flex direction equals to row, margin top equals to sizes.radius, justify content equals to center. Alright, now within this view, we are going to render the text itself and followed by the text button. Okay, so over here, we are going to render the text component, give it a bit of styling. Color equals to dark gray, and the fonts equals to body tree. Body tree, like that. Alright, and over here we are going to render don't have an account, like that. And over here we are going to render the text button component. Alright, so the label is going to be sign up. The button container style, the background color is going to be null. We do not want any background color. And the label style, color is going to be primary, and the fonts is going to be H3. Alright, and whenever we click on this button, I would like to navigate to the sign up screen. Alright, save it. Let me add a bit of margin left over here. 3. Perfect. Now whenever you click on this button, we should be able to navigate to the sign up screen. Sweet. Alright, now for the last section of the screen, which is the footer section, we are going to render two social buttons. For that reason, we will be creating a custom component called text icon button. Alright, so go back to your source code. In the components folder, we are going to create a new file called text icon button. Same thing, we need to import from React. We need to import from React Native. And for this component, we need touchable opacity. We need text, we need image, and also we need the style sheet, like that. After that, we need to import from constants. And over here, we need fonts as well as the colors. Alright, and lastly, we can then create the text icon button functional component. So constant text icon button. For this component, we are going to take in a few props, which are container style, the label style, icon position. It can be either left or right. Okay, icon style, and unpress. Alright, followed by the arrow function, and we are going to return something. Don't forget, we need to export default text icon button. And in order to make sure the code is more readable, I'm going to include the style for the icon over here. So constant styles equals to style sheet dot create image, and the margin left is going to be 5, width equals to 20, height equals to 20, and the tint color equals to colors.black. Right, now over here, we are going to return a touchable opacity. Give it a bit of styling. Flags direction equals to row. Align items equals to center. Justify content equals to center as well. And we are going to include the container style like this. The unpress equals to unpress. And now within this touchable opacity, we are going to render the image component, which is the icon actually, followed by the text component, right? And depending on the value of the icon position, we can render the icon on the left or on the right. Alright, so go back to your source code over here. If the icon position equals to left, then we are going to render the image component where the source equals to icon and the style equals to styles.image and followed by the icon style, like that. Alright, after the image component, we will be rendering the text component. Give it a bit of styling. The font should be equals to body tree, and we are going to include the label style like this. Alright, and over here we are going to render the label. And lastly, I'm going to copy and paste it from here like that. If the icon position equals to right, then I'm going to render this image component over here. Alright, now save it. Don't forget, we need to include it in the index.js file. Over here, I'm going to simply copy and paste it and replace it to text icon button. Of course, we need to export it over here. Alright, save it. Now head back to your sign-in screen. Oh, at the top, we need to import the text icon button. Alright, after that, head back to the footer section over here. This is going to be the footer section. We are going to render a container view, and within this view, we are going to render two social buttons, which are the Facebook login button followed by the Google login button. Okay, so over here we have the Facebook login button and followed by the Google. So for the Facebook login button, we will be rendering a text icon button component where the container style for the height is going to be 50, align items equals to center, border radius equals to sizes.radius, and the background color equals to colors.blue. Alright, the icon is going to be icons.facebook, icon position equals to left, icon style equals to thin color will be colors.white. Label is going to be continue with Facebook. Label style, the margin left will be sizes.radius. Color is going to be white. And lastly, whenever I click on this button, I would like to simply console log Facebook, like that. Alright, save it. Okay, great, the Facebook button is in place. Next, for the Google button, same thing, we need to render the text icon button component as well. The container style, height is going to be 50, align items equals to center, margin top equals to sizes.radius, border radius equals to sizes.radius as well, and lastly for the background color is going to be light gray 2, like that. Alright, the icon is going to be icons.google, icon position is going to be left, icon style, the tint color should be equals to null. We do not want any tint color. Alright, the label is going to be continue with Google, the label style, margin left should be equals to sizes.radius, and lastly whenever I click on this button, I will simply console log Google. Alright, save it. Perfect. Alright, so we have completed the sign in screen. Next we'll be working on the sign up screen. For the sign up screen, the layout is actually pretty much the same. In other words, we can make use of the off layout that we have created earlier. Alright, so go back to your source code, head over to the signup.js file. Over here, we are going to import a couple more components from React Native. Alright, we need view, we need text, we need touchable opacity, and also we need image. After that, we need to import from the screens folder, we need to import the off layout, like that. Next, we need to import from the constants folder, and over here we need fonts, sizes, fonts, sizes, colors, and icons. Alright, after this we need to import from the components. Alright, so for this we need the form input, text button, as well as the text icon button. Alright, and lastly we need to import from the utils. Alright, we need the utils function, like that. And over here, don't forget we need the navigation. This is so that we can navigate to other pages later on. And before we start to work on the UI, I'm gonna create the states over here first, since they are pretty much the same with what we had in the sign-in screen. Okay, so over here, constant email, set email, and the initial value is going to be an empty string, constant username, because this one has username over here. Alright, so constant username, set username equals to same thing, use state, and the initial value is going to be an empty string, constant password, set password, same thing, react.useState, and empty string. Next, we need the show pass state. This is so that we can toggle the password visibility over here. Alright, so set show pass equals to, and the initial value is going to be false. Alright, after this we have the email error. This is for the validation. Set email error equals to react.useState, and the initial value is going to be an empty string. Next we have username error. Set username error, same thing, an empty string. And lastly we have the password error. Set password error initial value is going to be an empty string as well. Alright, so these are all the states that we need in order to work on the sign up screen. Next, over here, we are going to render the off layout like that. Alright, the title is going to be Getting Started, and the subtitle is going to be Create an Account to Continue, and the title container style margin top is going to be sizes.radius. Alright, now save it. Sweet. Alright, now within the off layout, we will manually have two different sections, which are the form input and the sign up section over here, and followed by the footer section over here. Alright, so over here we have the form input and sign up section. Alright, and after that we have the footer section. Alright, so for this we need to render a container view, give it a bit of styling, flex equals to 1, and the margin top should be equals to sizes.padding. Alright, now the first text input that we have over here is the email. Alright, and we can actually copy it from the sign-in screen. It's actually the same. Alright, over here, I'm going to simply copy the whole thing and paste it over here. Alright, save it. Okay, cool. So we have the email text input in place. Next, we'll be working on the username. Alright, so over here, underneath the email form input, we will be rendering another form input like this, where the label equals to username, the container style, margin top is going to be sizes.radius, the onChange is going to be an arrow function like that, and we are going to set the username to value. The error message is going to be username error, and the append component, which is actually this icon over here, right? We are going to render a container view, give it a bit of styling, justify content equals to center. Alright, now over here we are going to render the image component. For the source, if the username equals to empty string, or the username not equals to empty string and the username error equals to empty, then we are going to render icons.correct icon. Alright, if it's not, then we are going to render cancel icon. Alright, so for the style, height is going to be 20, width equals to 20, and for the thin color, if the username equals to empty, then the color is going to be gray. Else if the username is not equals to empty and the username error equals to empty, then the color will be green, or else it will be red. Alright, save it. Sweet. So we have the email in place like that, and also we have the username text input in place as well. Perfect. For the third and the last text input is going to be the password, and same thing, we can actually copy it from the sign-in screen. Alright, I'm gonna simply copy and paste it over here. Alright, save it. Alright, the only difference is that whenever the password text field is being changed like that, I would like to validate the password as well. So utils.validate password, we are going to pass the value over as well as the set password error. And after the onChange prop, we need to supply the error message prop. Error message prop, and it's going to be password error. Alright, now save it. Now the password text input should throw us an error if we key in less than 9 characters. Right, let's try it out. Perfect. Okay, so that's all the form inputs that we need for this screen. Next, we'll be working on the sign up button over here. Alright, so go back to your source code. Over here, underneath the form input, we are going to render the sign up and sign in section, right? So for the sign up section, we are going to render the text button component like that, where the label is going to be sign up. The button container style, height should be equals to 55, align items should be equals to center, margin top equals to sizes.padding, border radius equals to sizes.radius, background color equals to colors.primary, and whenever I click on the sign up button, I would like to navigate to the OTP screen. Alright, save it. Okay, cool, so the sign up button is in place. However, just like what we did in the sign in screen, we need to apply some rule to the sign up button so that it will only be clickable after the user has filled in all the form inputs over here. Alright, so scroll to the top. Over here, we are going to create a new function called isEnable sign up, right? And we are going to return true if the email is not equals to empty and username is not equals to empty and password is not equals to empty and email error is equals to empty and password error is equals to empty, and lastly the username error is equals to empty. Alright, now go back to the sign up button. Over here, we are going to supply the disabled prop, and the disabled prop will be set to false if the isEnable sign up equals to true, like that. And if the isEnable sign up function equals to false, then we are going to disable the sign up button. Alright, and for the background color, it will only be primary if the isEnable sign up equals to true, like this. If it's not, then it will be colors.transparent primary. Alright, save it. Now if I were to remove any of this field, the sign up button should no longer be clickable. Alright, perfect. Yep, that's what we want. Okay, so after the sign up section, next we are going to work on the sign in section over here. Alright, so after this text button component, we are going to render a container view, give it a bit of styling, flex direction equals to row, flex direction equals to row, margin top equals to sizes.radius, and justify content equals to center. Now over here, we are going to render the text component, give it a bit of styling. Color will be colors.dark gray, and the fonts will be body tree, like that. Alright, and over here we are going to render already have an account. And after the text component, we are going to render the text button component. Alright, where the label is going to be sign in, button container style, the background color is going to be null, the label style, color is going to be primary, and the fonts will be H3. And lastly, whenever I click on this sign in button like that, I would like to go back to the previous screen. So go back. Alright, save it. Sweet. Now if I were to click on this, I should be able to navigate back to the sign in screen. Perfect. And lastly, for the footer section, it is actually the same as the sign in screen over here, which is basically two social buttons. For that reason, I'm going to simply copy and paste it from the sign in screen. So I'm gonna head over to the footer section over here. I'm going to copy everything like this and paste it in the sign up screen over here. Alright, save it. Perfect. Alright, so I think that's all for the sign up screen. Let me see. Alright, and next we'll be working on the OTP screen over here. So for the OTP screen, it's more or less the same. I mean, the layout is more or less the same as the sign in and the sign out screen, which means we can make use of the auth layout, right? So let's go back to the source code and work on the auth layout first, and we will take care of the OTP later on. Alright, so go back to the source code, head over to the OTP screen over here. We are going to import from constants. Over here we need fonts, sizes, and colors. Next we need to import from components, and for this we need to import the text button, and lastly, of course, we need to import the auth layout, right? So for the OTP functional component, don't forget we need the navigation. Alright, and over here I'm going to simply replace this with auth layout and set the title prop. The title prop equals to OTP authentication, and the subtitle prop equals to an authentication code has been sent to by programmers @gmail.com. Alright, and the title container style margin top should be equals to sizes.padding multiplied by 2. Alright, save it. Okay, so the auth layout is in place. Next we'll be working on the OTP input itself, and in order to implement this feature, we are going to make use of this library over here, React Native OTP input. Alright, so scroll down and copy this. You can use yarn if you want to. Go back to your source code, open up the terminal, paste it. Just that we would like to install the version 1.3.5. The reason being is because the latest version is not quite stable on some of the Android devices. For that reason, we will stick to the version 1.3.5 for now. Alright, so hit enter. Same thing, I'm going to close the app like that. And over here, I'm going to run npx react native link, and I'm going to cd into iOS and run pod install. And lastly, we can cd back to the root folder and run npx react native run iOS. Alright, I'm going to navigate to the OTP screen like this. I'm gonna fill this up. Alright, hit on the sign up button. Over here within the auth layout, we mainly have two different sections, which are the OTP input section and followed by the footer section over here. Alright, so over here we have OTP input section and followed by the footer section. So for the OTP input section, we will be rendering a container view. Give it a bit of styling. Flex should be equals to 1 and margin top should be equals to sizes.padding times 2. Alright, and in order to make use of the library that we have just installed, we need to import it over here. So import from tall, yep, this one, and we are going to import OTP input view. Alright, and over here, oops, we are going to render OTP input view like this. Next, we need to supply some of the props. So the pin count, which means the number of pin should be equals to 4 in our case. The style will be with 100% and the height will be 50. The code input field style, which is basically each of these inputs over here, alright? The style will be width 65, height 65 as well, border radius equals to sizes.radius, background color equals to colors.light gray 2, color will be black, and lastly the font will be H3. Alright, and whenever we fill up the code, so on code field, we will have one parameter which is the code followed by the arrow function, and we are going to simply console log the code itself. Alright, now save it. Perfect. Alright, so I can fill it up. Let me bring up the software keyboard like that, so I can fill it up like this. Perfect. Alright, after the OTP input section, next we'll be working on the countdown timer section over here. Alright, so after the OTP input view, over here, we will be working on the countdown timer. Oh, and for this section, we actually need a timer state. Alright, so over here, constant timer set timer equals to react.useState, and the initial value is going to be 60. Okay, now go back to the countdown section. Over here, we are going to render a container view, give it a bit of styling, flex direction equals to row, justify content equals to center, margin top equals to sizes.padding. Alright, now within this container view, alright, we are going to render a text component followed by the text button component over here. Alright, so over here we have the text component that says didn't receive code, like that. Give it a bit of styling. Color will be dark gray, and the font will be body tree. After this, we are going to render the text button component. The label is going to be resend in bracket. Over here is going to be the timer state, and followed by the S. And for the disabled prop, we will only set it to false if the timer equals to 0, or else we will disable the text button. Alright, for the button container style, margin left should be equals to sizes.base, and the background color should be equals to null. Okay, for the label style, color is going to be primary, and the fonts will be H3. And lastly, whenever we click on the resend button, I would like to set the timer back to 60 seconds. Alright, save it. Okay, so we have the countdown timer section in place. All we need to do now is to implement the countdown timer itself, and we can achieve that by using set interval. Alright, so over here, we need to first make use of the use effect hook, like that. And here it's going to be an empty array. And here we can then declare the interval variable. So let interval equals to set interval. Alright, arrow function. And I would like this interval to be triggered every 1000 milliseconds. So over here, we are going to set the timer. We need to get access to the previous timer, like this. Alright, or the old timer, you can name it whatever you want. Alright, followed by the arrow function. If the previous timer is more than 0, then we are going to return previous timer minus 1. Else, we are going to return previous timer. Alright, and after this, don't forget we need to clean up the interval. So return arrow function clear interval, like that. Alright, save it. Alright, as you can see here, this timer starts to count down. Perfect. Next, we'll be working on the footer section over here. Alright, so go back to the source code. In the footer section, we are going to render a container view, and within this view, we are going to render the text button component, like that, where the label equals to continue, button container style, height will be 50, align item will be center, border radius is going to be sizes.radius, and the background color is going to be primary. Alright, and whenever we click on this button, I would like to simply console log continue, like that. Alright, save it. Okay, after the continue button, next we are going to work on the term and conditions section. Alright, so over here, after the text button component, we are going to render a container view. Give it a bit of styling. Margin top equals to sizes.padding, and the align item should be equals to center. Alright, and over here, we need to render the text component. Give it a bit of styling. The color should be equals to dark gray, and the fonts should be equals to body tree. Alright, and over here we are going to render by signing up. You agree to our terms and conditions. Alright, so over here we are going to render a text button like that, and the label is going to be terms and conditions. Button container style, same thing, background color is going to be null. Label style, the color is going to be primary, and the fonts will be body tree. And lastly, whenever we click on this text button, I would like to simply console log terms and condition. Alright, save it. Perfect. Alright, so that's all for the RTP screen. Next, we'll move on to the last screen of this project, which is the password recovery or the forgot password screen. And yes, we can make use of the off layout that we have created earlier. Okay, so go back to your source code. I'm gonna navigate to the forgot password screen, which is over here. Next, open up the forgot password .js file. Over here, we need to import a couple more components from React Native. We need touchable opacity, and also we need image. Alright, next we need to import from the screens folder. We need to import the off layout. Next, we need to import from the constants. Over here, we need fonts, sizes, colors, and icons. Alright, next we are going to import from components. For this, we need the form input and also the text button. And lastly, we are going to import from utils, like that. Alright, now don't forget we need to include the navigation as well, like that. Alright, so for the forgot password screen, we are going to render, same thing, the off layout, like that, where the title is going to be password recovery, and the subtitle is going to be please enter your email address to recover your password. Alright, and the title container style, the margin top should be equals to sizes.padding times 2. Alright, save it. Perfect. Now for this screen, we only have one form input, and that is the email form input. Alright, so go back to your source code. The first thing we need to do here is to create the state first. Alright, so constant email set email equals to react.useState, and the initial value is going to be an empty string. Constant, we need the email error state as well. Set email error equals to react.useState, same thing, an empty string, sorry. And over here within the off layout, we will have mainly two sections, which is the form input section and followed by the button section. Alright, so we have the form input section and followed by the button section. Alright, so for the form input section, we are going to render a container view, give it a bit of styling, flex equals to 1, and margin top equals to sizes.padding times 2. Alright, and for the email, since it's actually the same as the one we have in the sign-in screen, I'm gonna just copy and paste it from here as well. Alright, I'm gonna copy the email form input and paste it over here. Save it. Perfect. And all we need to do now is to render the send email button over here. Alright, so go back to your source code. Over here, we are going to render a text button component. Label is going to be send email. Button container style, height will be 55. Align items is going to be center. Margin top is going to be sizes.padding. Border radius is going to be sizes.radius. And lastly, for the background color, it's going to be colors.primary. And whenever we click on this send email button, I'm going to go back to the previous screen. Alright, now save it. Alright, we have successfully rendered the text button, but just like what we did in the other screens over here, We should only enable the button after the user has filled in the email text input. Alright, so scroll to the top over here, we are going to create a new function. Same thing, is enable send email. And we are going to return true if the email is not equals to an empty string and the email error equals to empty string. Alright, now go back to the send email button. Over here for the disable prop, we are going to set it to false if the is enable send email function returns true. Alright, if this function returns false, we are going to disable the send email text button. And for the background color, it's going to be primary if the is enable send email function returns true. If it returns false, then the color will be colors.transparent primary. Alright, save it. Let me try to sort of, refresh the text input. Alright, as you can see here, the button is being disabled, and if I were to key in a valid email, the button should be enabled. Alright guys, and there you have it. We have finally completed this pretty cool food delivery app based on the UI design that we have just bought recently. The full source code for this project is available on shop.byprogrammers.com, and I have included the link in the description below. For those of you who bought the part 1 source code before this, we would like to take this opportunity to say thank you from the bottom of our heart for supporting us, and you may proceed to re-download the source code from shop.byprogrammers.com by using the same account you used to purchase part 1 source code. Okay, so thanks for watching guys. If you liked the video, we'll be more than happy if you can give it a thumbs up, comment, share it to your friends, and also don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. I will see you guys in the next video. Happy coding. Peace.